Humans have returned to the moon. The year is 2024. For the first time since 1972, humans are returning to the moon. It's been 51 years since we left. But now, with all the scientific advancements we've made in the past half century, what can we really expect to see once we get there? How will it be different this time around? Let's find out. This is our channel. We have seen what astronauts have described as otherworldly sights. They've explained to us how black and empty space can be, how loud silence can be, and how big Earth is when you see it from far enough away. And they've also told us that the moon isn't what we thought it was. We didn't realize just how hollow it was, how dry it was, or how much radiation it gets. Even though we've learned a lot about the moon in the past 50 years, there still may be things that surprise us. There's so much that we don't know about the universe, and space is constantly defying our expectations. So what might we see when we return to the moon? When humans went to the moon the first time, it was exciting. There were a lot of unknowns, but NASA knew pretty much what to expect based on all the research they had done up to that point. Of course, there were surprises like how crater walls break apart. But for the most part, the astronauts were prepared for what they saw, mostly because the Apollo missions had been planned so thoroughly. This time, however, things are very different. For one, these new missions won't be nearly as planned out. In fact, some of them won't even be going to the moon at all. They'll be orbiting around it. But more importantly, we have no idea what to expect because we're not going back to the same moon that we left. The moon has changed a lot in the past 50 years, or has it? Well, yes and no. The moon is both the same and very different than it was back then. It looks the same, but it's in a very different state than it was when we left. The moon isn't really an object. It's more like a giant pile of debris held together by gravity. And because of that, it's eroding. Every day, meteorites hit the moon, causing small earthquakes called moonquakes, which loosen the surface of the moon, causing it to erode. On top of that, micrometeorites hit the moon every single day, hitting the surface so fast that they cause the minerals in the regolith to glow. These constant meteor showers have caused a thin layer of dust called regolith to cover the entire moon. In fact, the moon is covered in craters, many of which haven't even been discovered yet. And on top of all that, the moon is slowly drifting away from Earth. According to NASA, the moon moves away from the Earth about 1.5 inches per year. That might not sound like much, but it's actually quite a lot. The moon is currently at its closest point to the Earth, and scientists predict it will continue to drift away until it reaches its farthest point in about 600 million years. At that point, the gravitational pull between the two objects will reach an equilibrium, and the moon will stop drifting away. But what will the moon look like by then? Well, that's anyone's guess. Now, luckily for us, we won't have to wait 600 million years to find out. We can go back to the moon now and see what it's like. And NASA plans to do exactly that. NASA has already begun sending rockets to the moon, and they plan to send even more in the near future. So far, they have sent their Orion spacecraft into orbit around the moon, where it successfully tested its propulsion system and navigation. In addition to that, NASA's Artemis 1 mission successfully launched in 2022 and arrived at the moon in 2023. However, it didn't land on the moon. Instead, it simply orbited around it before heading back to Earth. It was a successful mission overall, but if it landed on the moon, it would have been met with a very unpleasant surprise. NASA wouldn't have been able to land in the same spot that Apollo 11 landed, and that's because the moon has changed. Since then, in fact, the moon was very different when Apollo 11 landed there in 1969. NASA didn't realize it at the time, but the moon was in a very unique state. The moon was completely coated with regolith, a layer of dust that is created by meteorite impacts. Regolith acts like a blanket, insulating the moon and keeping it warm. It also causes the moon to reflect more sunlight than it should. In fact, the moon doesn't produce any light at all. It only reflects the light from the sun, and because of the regolith, it's brighter than it should be. So when Apollo 11 landed on the moon, they were met with a bright, reflective surface. But today, the surface of the moon is much darker, because the regolith has eroded away, revealing the darker rocks underneath. That's why when the Orion spacecraft flew by the moon in 2022, it didn't land. The surface of the moon looked completely different than what NASA expected. They were expecting a bright, reflective surface, but instead they were met with a dark, dusty one. It wasn't until they got back to Earth and examined the images that they realized what had happened. The lunar surface had changed, and that means that when humans finally set foot on the moon again, they'll be landing on a completely different world. That might sound scary, but it's not. In fact, it's exciting. We don't know what to expect, and that means there's a chance we could discover something amazing. For example, we don't know how thick the regolith is on the moon. Some scientists say it's only a few feet thick, while others say it could be hundreds of feet thick. If we find out that it's hundreds of feet thick, that would mean that the moon is much closer to Earth than we think. It would also mean that the gravitational pull between the two objects is stronger than we think. That could have all sorts of implications for our understanding of the universe. On top of that, we don't know what's underneath the regolith. There could be water, ice, or even diamonds. In fact, scientists believe that there could be so much water on the moon that it could support a human colony there. If that's true, then the moon could become a second home for humans. We could use it as a base to explore the rest of the solar system. We could also use it to mine resources that we can't find on Earth. The moon could become one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in the solar system. Of course, we don't know any of that for sure. But what we do know is that the moon has changed a lot in the past 50 years. And when we return there, we're going to be met with a completely different world. It'll be a world without the bright reflective surface that we saw in the old pictures. It'll be a world covered in a thin layer of dust and rock. It'll be a world that we've never seen before. And that's exciting. What do you think we'll find when we return to the moon? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thanks for watching. This is our channel, and we'll see you next time.